Hello friends, Rob Caskie, telling stories. You know me now. I was lucky enough on this last voyage to Antarctica to join Silver Sea for the first time on a ship called the Silver Whisper. And I was picked up in Punta Arenas, travelled down through the Chilean fjords. We bypassed Ushuaia. For COVID reasons, we couldn't go to Ushuaia, being in Argentina. Then out of the Beagle Channel into the infamous Drake Passage. Now the Drake marks that passage of water between South America and Antarctica. And because of the circumpolar current flowing clockwise around Antarctica, you have this funneling of wind and water through the narrows between South America and Antarctica that creates perhaps one of the roughest crossings in the world. And so many folks are afraid of the Drake. There are many who want to go to Antarctica and in fact avoid it because of what they've heard about the mighty Drake crossing. And in my experience, perhaps 3 out of 10 Drake crossings are rough. The other 6 or 7 work out absolutely fine. And south of the exit from the Beagle Channel into the Drake is Cape Horn. Cape Horn, the place that so many seafarers in days gone by were terrified of, especially in sea conditions, with ships sail power only trying to get round the southern point of South America, Tierra del Fuego, and up the other side. And of course the Southern Ocean is known as the wildest ocean to man. It comes with those lovely acronyms of the Roaring 40s, the Furious 50s, and the Screaming 60s. And when you get down to the latitudes of 50 and 60 and perhaps even 70 degrees south, the wind indeed plays a major role in every decision made, and particularly with landings. And for the bird watchers, they always want some wind because the great avian flyers of the world need wind to fly. So the albatrosses and the petrels and the shearwaters and the fulmars, they like the wind. When you have calm conditions, you generally are unable to observe these mighty flyers doing their thing on the whim of the wind. From Cape Horn, we moved across into Antarctica. Most of the guests do not understand the difference between a classic cruise ship and a classic expedition ship, and that cruise ships cannot deploy and load the Zodiacs as quickly as expedition ships can, and we were only able to do 1 landing a day rather than 2. And there were some guests, I think, who dreamed or expected to be doing 2 landings a day, but when you have more than 200 guests on board of the ship, it's impossible to do so. And from there, on our journey that really was part of a world cruise, we were going to do the famous Cape to Cape, which is Cape Horn to Cape Town. So the next stop was at South Georgia, that little pinprick of an island, which in days gone by was the headquarters of world whaling, part of the Scotia Arc, indeed part of the Andes Mountains. When Antarctica separated from South America, you had this huge Scotia Arc created, and within the Scotia Arc, some of the land mass protruded from the sea in the form of South Georgia. And bisecting South Georgia is the Alados mountain range, which really is part of the Andes, one of the most inhospitable mountain ranges on earth. And I was lucky enough to be at the boss's grave, at Ernest Shackleton's grave, on the centenary of his death. The 5th of January 2022 marked 100 years since Ernest Shackleton died at Grytviken on the 5th of January of 1922, aged 47. And of course, with the recent discovery of the Endurance, his ship, which sank in the Weddell Sea, crushed by ice, the interest in Shackleton really is right now at an all-time high. We found starkly varying weather conditions on South Georgia. We went to Stromness Whaling Station, where snow was falling very strongly, forcing us 30 nautical miles south, where we went to another bay and valley and found great weather, calm conditions, no snow, and had a fantastic landing. It was at that landing that one of the funniest incidents of the whole season took place, where an Antarctic fur seal, a young male, jumped into one of my companion Zodiacs, Russ Manning. We call him Russ of the Antarctic. And when Russ tried to chase the seal out of his Zodiac, it in fact bit him on the calf, and it refused to get out of the Zodiac. And after some time with us rolling in laughter on the beach, Russ started his Zodiac and calmly drove across to the rocks where there were a lot of other seals. And the seal calmly jumped off the Zodiac onto the rocks as if he was getting out of an Uber. That was just the ride he needed. I cannot tell you quite how funny it all was. And then from South Georgia, we made our way northwards towards Tristan da Cunha, that tiny little pinprick discovered in 1507 by Tristan, or rather Tristão da Cunha, one of the great Portuguese seafarers and admirals, and a great colleague of Albuquerque. It was discovered only 5 years after the discovery of St. Helena, and one really needs to look at the history of these two great islands in conjunction, because their histories and their early discovery by the Portuguese is a fascinating story. And our time at Tristan da Cunha was magnificent. We spent time doing a zodiac cruise on Nightingale Island. Not far away is Inaccessible Island, and of course the classic volcanic shape with St. Mary's Peak of the main Tristan da Cunha, with its settlement called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. A really rather ostentatious name. There are only about 220 people who live there, and a place known for its lobster fishing, the quality of its fishing, and indeed the quality of the seamanship of those who call Tristan da Cunha home. From Tristan da Cunha, we were to sail northeastwards towards Cape Town, the end point of the journey for us as the expedition team, although the world cruise would continue up the east coast of Africa. And some of the lecturers who'd been asked to have 7 lectures ready immediately realized that their 6th and 7th lecture were not quite ready. They had 4 or 5 lectures well prepared, but indeed we're going to have to pad out lectures 6 and 7. And of course, with my interest in South African history, the Anglo-Zulu War, the Anglo-Boer War, and associated matters, I said to them that I would happily take over their slots and do the talks and the talk slots coming into Cape Town. And it was a fantastic journey, as I was able to give the background to the Anglo-Zulu War, the background to the Anglo-Boer War, talk about battles of Isandlwana and Rorke's Drift in great detail, and then talk about some of the early battles in the Anglo-Boer War, and indeed that Akov massacre, Spioenkop, on the evening before we landed in Cape Town. And in terms of cities around the world, I think that San Francisco rates very highly, as does Sydney. But indeed, as Francis Drake called Cape Town the fairest cape in all the world, there was tremendous hype on board of the ship as we approached Cape Town. And we approached Cape Town from the south in the dawn. And the sun was coming through over Table Mountain, over Signal Hill, over Lion's Head, and creating these great fingers of God running down onto the ocean. All the guests on deck were asking me about the various landmarks. We could see the 12 Apostles, the 12 Apostles Hotel, the little pinprick of the upper cable car station on Table Mountain. And I want to tell you, it was a very proud moment for me as a South African, sailing into our mother city with these world cruisers who have traveled literally all over the world, and to see them stumbling around on the deck with their jaws on the floor as they sailed into this most beautiful and cosmopolitan of African cities, Cape Town. Well, after a full 3 months on board ship, working in Antarctica, let me tell you, I was ready to get off and meet up with Karen, family, and particularly the grandkids in Cape Town, and to get back on firm land, get away from the COVID protocols on board of the ships, and indeed reconnect with my motherland. And I want to tell you, coming into Cape Town on the 22nd of February this year was an incredibly special moment for me. I hope you've enjoyed this little story about my trip from Cape to Cape, and I hope you'll join me for stories in the future. Thank you so much.